Guys, it's Chris. It's Sunday night. It's the Prodigy Maker Show every Sunday night, 9:45 p.m. on Facebook Live. It's good to see all you folks again. I'm sorry I missed last week. I was traveling up to Vermont to my club to work on my clay courts. And I missed you guys. I missed the discussion. But we're back for another show. And we've got some great topics tonight. I'm here with my co-host, Sammy, the Academy dog, who is currently sleeping in his cage, so he's not going to help out much tonight. But Sammy, how you doing, buddy? Doing good? Wait, guys, here he comes. All right, I'm going to have you say hello. I know we have some Sammy fans. Hold on, here he is. Come say hi. Come say hi, buddy. Say hi to all the friends all around the world. Say hello. Hey, say hello. Hey. Oh. All right, good boy. All right, so Sammy's in the house. We're all here. Wanted to talk to you guys about junior development and high performance tennis. That's what we do every Sunday night. I was working all weekend, some long hours this weekend, but I'm ready to talk tennis. How about you? You ready? There he is, the legend, the legendary Sammy, the Academy dog. Guys, a lot of kids are very excited to see Sammy in Vermont at our summer camp coming up soon. So if you're coming to Vermont, you get to meet Sammy in person, and he helps me run the show. Dogs are allowed at my tennis club in Vermont, and actually it's kind of cool. We have a friend of mine, John Yandel, who you guys may know from tennisplayer.net. He's a very well-known tennis analyst and a leader in the tennis industry. He's going to be coming up to the club this summer to do some filming, which is going to be really awesome. And we're going to film a couple articles. We're going to film an article on volleys. So kind of break down my system and the way that I develop the volley and the net game. And also, John is going to help me film an article series on the drop shot. So we'll be filming that up in Vermont at my camp in June. So I'm very excited to have John Yandel visiting the Academy this summer. And I've done a lot of articles with John for tennisplayer.net over the years. And he's going to be bringing his dog to hang out with Sammy. That's sort of where that connection came from. So John Yandel is coming to Vermont from California, and he's going to be bringing his dog to hang out with my dog. That's going to be cool, right, Sammy? Gonna have a buddy? Yeah, gonna have a buddy. All right, so let's see who's tuning in. I'll wait for everyone to sign on and join the conversation. I know some of you like to just listen to the tennis talk, and that is perfectly fine. If you have a comment or a question, you can just post it. Post a comment or question, and I get it in my feed, and I try to answer everyone's question and try to share in the discussion with everyone as best I can. If I miss your question or comment somehow, if it skips in my feed, I will always check the comments later and try to answer via text if I don't get to answer your question live on video. So let's see who's tuning in. My friend Naeem Azar is waving. Thank you for waving. Hani Sharkawi is waving. I appreciate that, guys. Appreciate you guys supporting the show. Donnie Levitt is watching. Donnie is watching every Sunday night. Donnie, thanks for tuning in, buddy. I like your profile pic there. Nice. Star Wars. Let's see. Hugo Ball Green is watching. My old friend Jim Kane is on the program tonight. What's up, Jim? Let me know if you have any technical questions. You know, guys, on this show, we love to talk technique, high performance training, and junior development. Those are usually the topics on hand, on tap. But, we cover everything. Tactics, general tennis questions. We talk about pro tennis sometimes and the state of the game. So anything you guys want to talk about, just let me know, and we will do that. Tonight, I wanted to talk about red, orange, green. Sometimes I call it the myth of red, orange, green, or the myth of U10 tennis. And what is it? You want to go on the couch? Guys, one moment. Sammy's got to go to the couch. He likes to snuggle up there. You're going to snuggle in there? Okay. All right. Come on. Go do it. Go for it. He's so stubborn. Like, he's really stubborn. He wants his couch time. I usually give him a little couch time on Sunday night. So Sammy's chilling on the couch. We're talking tennis. Let's do this, guys. Vamos. Let's do this the Spanish way. Late night Sunday. Appreciate you guys for tuning in this late. I know it's not easy and everyone's busy, but we usually have an amazing discussion, and we cover some of the big topics in high performance. So tonight, red, orange, green. Let's dig into it a little bit. Why do I call it a myth? Well, because it's unproven for elite development. I don't think it's a myth for making the game fun for kids, but I think it's a myth for high performance. I think it's a myth as a proven way to develop top players. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at. And I think you don't want to, you can't equate one for the other. And so I think a lot of times that you hear that there's evidence that red, orange, green is a better way, but I don't believe there's evidence for that red, orange, green is a better system for training elite juniors. And that's sort of what I focus on. I focus on working with elite kids who are, trying to be top college players, top in the country. Some of the kids want to play professional. And I'm not sold that the red, orange, green method, or whatever you want to call it, play and stay, or every country has a different name for it. Sometimes in the US we call it U10s, or what's the other name we call it in the US? Tout, like tennis, tennis under 10s, tennis under 10s. Every country's got a different name for it. Basically, low compression balls and modified courts, and Personally, I use a lot of yellow ball with my young players, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I have a very good track record in developing top-ranked kids in the country, and I don't really have an issue using the yellow ball, especially if the kid is gifted and talented. So I just know from my own experience, I'm doing a lot of yellow ball training, and without a deleterious effect on my players or their development. And I know that there are, it's a big debate. It's a very, very controversial subject. A lot of coaches really are, I don't want to insult anyone, but I think that many coaches are completely brainwashed, and they almost have a cultish following of the red, orange, green approach, the mini tennis approach, the low compression ball approach, whatever you want to call it. And I think other coaches are sort of slavishly anti-colored ball. They're obsessed with the yellow ball, and they think that there's no, they think that it's a total scam to use a low compression ball or play mini tennis. And I'm sort of in the middle. I think that the red, orange, green is good, very good for introducing kids to the game, very good for making the game fun, but not proven as a better, faster way to develop high-performance kids. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. If you agree or disagree, let me know. Share a comment or ask a question. We can sort of dig into the discussion. I know there's a lot of people tuning in. I see some old friends. Nicholas Wagner is watching. Very good high-performance coach in the U.S. here. I see Mark Lewis is watching. Guyal Pitts Black is a regular. Guys, really appreciate you supporting the program on a late Sunday night. Greg Zachary is waving. That's my Facebook buddy. What's up, man? Pei Bo is watching. Thank you, amigos. I appreciate you tuning in. So I had an email this week. What sort of spurred the discussion was I had an email from a parent, and he asked me about red, orange, green. And he said that in his section, I think it was the Intermountain section, that the Little Mo canceled one of its young 8 and under divisions because there was no one who wanted to play with the green or yellow ball. In other words, there were no kids from that section who knew or wanted to play with the green or yellow ball. So Little Mo canceled the 8 and unders. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And the dad asked me, what do you think about this, Chris? Do you think that young kids can play with the yellow ball in a full court? Do you think they should be all training with the red ball? And I would say that in my experience, when you have a gifted kid, it's very easy for them to play with a yellow ball. I would say generally around 7 or 8 years old. You know, certainly by 9 or 10, when you have a kid who's talented, who's got some ability, they can play with a lot of control with the yellow ball, and it's really not a big deal. But it's such a controversial issue. Like, you get into such a firestorm these days if you start, you bring up that topic. You say, well, I have some kids, they're doing yellow ball. In some parts of the country, some clubs, I mean, you can really get a lot of criticism, and there's a lot of haters when it comes to that discussion, and I certainly am not. I've certainly experienced that. Some of the messages that I get from parents are really outrageous. I have parents who are scolded, who are castigated, and basically told that they're ruining their children if they dare to play them with the yellow ball. I mean, I have reports from many parents. They come to me from all over the U.S. and some from international parents, and many times they can't even find a club where they could train with a yellow ball. It's verboten. It's forbidden. It's a taboo subject to even bring up with a coach at a club. So this is cultish behavior around the country. I'll just speak for the U.S. because that's where I coach. Cultish behavior where there's no room for dissension. There's no room for a middle ground. It's very black and white. You either train red, orange, green, or you're ruining your kid. You are going to injure your player. Your player's not going to develop into a high-performance player because they're not following the correct pathway. These are some of the messages that parents are getting, and I think these are very negative and harmful messages, and I don't agree. I have, for years I've been training yellow ball. Sometimes I have a little kid, maybe, if they're very young, we might train with the softball. But pretty soon I transition them to yellow. I have some players who play occasionally with the green ball on a full court, and it's really not a big deal. It's very easy to do if you're a good player. Like I'm a high-level player, former Division I college player and futures player, and I can control the ball very well. And if I'm doing a private lesson, it's very easy for me to give the ball to a player the way that I want. I'm not going to bounce it over their head or anything like that. So I achieve a good control with the kids that I'm working with, and it's not that big of a challenge, and you can kind of move the kids along very quickly when you're just dealing with one ball. You don't have to do these stages. We go from one stage to the next, and there's a lot of waiting. There's a long waiting period, and so I just find it very simple and clean, a very easy way to develop players. And I don't do a lot of little kid groups, so I'm interested if there are coaches out there who do a lot of little kid groups. What is your perspective on that? I know if I had a group of players that were very little, I might use more of a low compression ball with those kids to get some better control and rallies if they're rallying together. Maybe get some longer rallies in the points. But guys, I just don't think it's a black and white issue. I don't think one is necessarily evil or terribly wrong. I think you can develop high-performance players using a red, orange, green pathway. And I think you can also develop high-level players using a yellow ball. And you're not going to injure a kid if you use a yellow ball. I mean, if you're careful and thoughtful and you're conscientious about what you're doing, you're have a good awareness and you're using some common sense, you're not going to hurt a player if they're 7 or 8 and they're playing with a yellow ball. I have no doubt in my mind about that. I can't prove it to you guys, but I don't have a study to support that. But this is obviously my opinion from years of working with little kids in the trenches. I think that using modified frames is a good idea. Using the right, a size racket that a young player can manage. It's probably not healthy for a young player to be swinging a very heavy, long stick when they're small. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It's going to put more wear and tear on the shoulder and the elbow and the wrist, for example. So, those are some thoughts. Modified rackets, good idea. The ball system, not really necessary. Now, can you do it that way? Yeah, and I would never say that it's wrong. I'm not venomously or vehemently against low compression balls and that methodology. I do see a lot of pitfalls and problems that in the implementation, especially here in the U.S. I'd like to talk about that too. The politics, for one, the politics of red, orange, green at the local club is out of control. And what I mean by that is the coaches have all the power, and there's all these meetings where the committees where they determine who's ready to move up and who's not, and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of shuck and jive, and there's a lot of playing favorites, and there's the parents have to kiss a lot of ass, to get their kid to move up another level. It's ridiculous, guys. Absolutely ridiculous. Some of the stories that I hear from parents at their club is just absurd. It's crazy. Cray-cray, as I like to say. Totally nuts. Bananas, as my wife would say. Totally bananas, some of the stories that I'm hearing of the politics and the team meetings and the committees. And, you don't want to step on anyone's toes. You don't want to ask the coach, is my son or daughter, is little Johnny ready yet? I don't really want to ask because then the coach might get pissed, and then he's going to keep little Johnny another 3 months in the stage. Come on, guys. It's created a ripple effect that I don't think we anticipated in terms of the politics of power, the power and politics at the club. And there's some other deleterious effects that I've seen, and I've heard stories from parents who are in those kinds of systems, But let's get into that. I wanted to answer a few comments that are posted. Let's see who's tuning in here. Just let me scroll down and we'll kind of get into it a little bit. But yeah, I wanted to address I had a nice parent who sent me an email with a question about that. So I sort of wanted to dig into the topic. And he said that he would watch the show and that would help him. So, trying to help that dad out here tonight. And I think it's kind of a hot topic, big controversy that around the tennis coaching world. So Greg Zachary is a regular on the show. Greg, thanks for supporting our show. He says, I saw a 7-year-old with a double wrist surgery before ROG came around. That is a scary thing to see. Well, Greg, I'll tell you, I've never in my life seen a child that age with a wrist injury or surgery. And what does that mean? That's one example. That's not a study. It's not scientific evidence that there was one kid who got injured. I'm sure it's possible that a child got injured. But was that because of the yellow ball, or was it because of a very heavy racket? A racket that was too big for the kid to swing? What's your takeaway from that? You saw one child with the wrist surgery. So what? And does that mean every child that plays with the yellow ball is going to get hurt? I don't think that's true. And in my experience, and I'm sure you're an experienced coach, amigo, but in my experience, I've never had an injury. I've never seen that. I've never seen a little kid with a wrist that I've worked with. I've worked with hundreds of little kids. I'm not saying my experience is evidence for all, but I can tell you that I haven't seen it. Coaches, chime in. Have you seen a lot of little kid injuries? The thing is it the racket or is it the ball? But I'm a little tired of coaches telling parents that if they dare to play their kid with a fast ball, that they're for sure gonna get hurt, because there's no evidence of that. We don't have there's no proven studies of that. You show me link the study. Show me where the study's at that prove that if you play with yellow, you're gonna get hurt. Because I'll just tell you, there's been decades of experiential evidence from years in the trenches. Kids played with a yellow ball for decades, man. And I don't remember a lot of wrist injuries and kids used to play with heavy wooden rackets, you know, and yellow balls and full court. And yeah, I mean, is that probably not the best thing to do with a little kid? Yeah. But, you know, not many kids were getting hurt from that. But I think what does it is that the racket, I'm more concerned about the weight and the size of the stick. And obviously overplaying, like, you know, kids playing way too much or taking too many swings or too many serves at a young age. You know, it's more, for me, it's more about the coaching and the common sense of the parent, the guidance of the coach that keeps a kid safe. It's not the ball or even the racket for that matter. You know, you get little kids playing with a heavy racket. What should they do? They should choke up on the racket. They shouldn't be holding it down at the bottom where it's such a long lever that they can't control it, you know. They shouldn't be doing a ton of overhead serves with that heavy racket. You know, so it's a matter of having a smart coach and a smart parent running the show and guiding the kids so they don't do something stupid and get hurt. You know, so, you know, I'm not really persuaded by one example here or there, a personal story about a kid getting hurt, although I'm sure that's a pretty scary thing. Mike Vasquez is waving. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the program, guys. Very interesting discussion tonight. John Locke is watching. Sounds like a new viewer. Appreciate you tuning into the show. Viorel Bunila says, good evening. What's up, man? Hola. Thank you, amigo, for tuning in. Thanks for the shout out. Appreciate it. Tom Downs is watching. Wait a minute, that's my Facebook buddy. What's up, Tom? How are you? Tom is a very accomplished coach, and we share a former player that we worked with, right, Tom? Yeah. We won't name her name, but she's got a tiger mom. We know that. A lot of the top players have tiger parents. Come on, guys, you know that. And let me tell you, a lot of those top kids are not playing with a red or an orange ball when they're like 8 or 9. I'll just say this. Any kid who's actually really gifted, like way off the bell curve, like way over to the right of the bell curve, they can easily, and I mean easily, play with a yellow ball at 7, 8, 9. It's not challenging. In fact, sometimes I joke with my parents and say, I'd like to find a ball that's faster, like a different color that's faster for those talented kids. So then it would speed up their nervous system and their reactions and get their eyes sharper and make them challenge their movement even more. You know, if there was a faster ball than yellow, I'd try to maybe find that for the kids that are really gifted. How about that? I'll just go out on the limb and say that, guys. I'm looking for, can somebody manufacture a faster ball? Because that's what, it's not a challenge for really gifted kids. So if you ever worked with a talented athlete, a really good athlete, and I work with a lot of them, at 7, 8, 9, it's not a big deal because they move really well and they have great eyes, and you just teach them how to move up and back so that the ball's not bouncing over their head. You teach them to take the ball in the rise, and it's not a big deal. And they're not going to get injured. So, you know, that's how I see it. That's based on my experience. And I'm tired of coaches and whoever's out there in the industry just shoving that myth down everyone's throats and scaring the bejesus out of parents. You know, parents coming to me saying, I'm afraid to play with the yellow. I think I should wait one more year to play with the yellow because I don't want to get hurt. You know, it's more about the stick, you know, than the ball. Because if you teach kids to move well, the yellow ball's not an issue. If you teach a kid to move, so what should they do? If the ball's bouncing high, what should they do? They should move back quickly. Get in position, come on. Or teach them to take it on the rise, come on. You know, guys, just teach. Teach the game well. Like I said, I really believe that development is about the coach, the philosophy, and the parent. The parent. The intelligence and the experience and the common sense and the guidance from the parent and the coach are what make a good player. It's not the balls. It's not the racket. It's not the size of the court. It's usually the coach. And if it's with the prodigy kids, a lot of times it is the parent. The parent is a big part of the deal. And, you know, if a parent does something stupid or if a coach doesn't teach the skill well, you're going to have issues. I don't care what color you're using. And I'd like to get back to that point in a moment, because the red, orange, green that we see in the US is not the red, orange, green mini tennis that you see in France or in Belgium or in some of the European countries that do it really well. You know, so that's the other thing. The way that we do red, orange, green here in the US, I'm just going to say it, it's a joke. It's laughable. It's a shame the way we do it. We don't do it the way they do it in France and Belgium, because they teach the game better. They teach technique better. They teach footwork better. They teach more creative skills with the racket, you know, more creativity and feel. And what we do is we just take the red, orange, green and play games. You know, that's not really what it's all about. You know, some of the leaders of games-based approach. We can get into games-based approach because I've had a lot of discussions and debate about that. That's a controversial issue too. But, you know, it's not, they like to say, the advocates of game-based, of GBA, game-based approach, they like to say, well, it's not games-based approach, it's game-based approach. You know, so they like to make that differentiation, and they're really sort of cocky when they say it, you know, like it's not games-based approach. But in a way, those experts are right. And here in the US, we do a lot of games-based approach. We don't teach a lot of technique and skill within a game. We just play games, you know, to make it fun for the kids. And what you see is, sorry, I got off on a little tangent here, but what you see, just want to get this point out there, is that what you see with red, orange, green in the US is you see a lot of players coming out of U10 who are disaster technically. They have very poor movement and footwork skills, and they don't have a lot of a creative game with good feel. The stroke production is not good. So it's not the same in Europe. In France and Belgium, you see players who are 8, 9, 10, and they're playing on a mini tennis court, but they look damn good. You know, they look like little pros, moving beautifully, elasticity, you know, variety of stroke production. It's a beautiful thing to see. And that's doing red, orange, green the right way, guys, because they teach technique. You know, they're heavily invested in technical training. And I think that's what's wrong here in the US. Like we have the red, orange, green, we have the small courts, mini tennis, but we just screw it up. Like the adaptation to the US has gone completely off track, and it's devolved. It's just a devolution. It's devolved into games, you know, games and stiff strokes and poor movement. It's sad. It's very sad, because I see all those kids at 10, at 11, at 12. They all come to me for high performance, coming out of different clubs with U10 programs, and their games are a disaster, technically, skill-wise, you know. So that, you know, maybe that's, don't mean to get off on a rant here, but you guys know how sometimes I get passionate about certain subjects, you know. We can get into that a little more. Let me get to some of your questions and comments, because I see a lot of stuff thrown up on the board here. My buddy Paul Zubarev is waving. I think Paul's tuned in before. Thank you for supporting the show. My friend Michael Furman, Carlos Carrera is waving. Got a lot of regulars tuning in. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the support on a late Sunday night. Let's get after it. Let's get into this, guys. Greg Zachary says, for groups, it's great because you can scale high-performance drills on the small format, and competitive drill can make more sense for 8-year-olds. Like I said, I'm not a black and white guy. I think it's very true that for group training, using a low compression ball makes some sense. You know, you can slow things down and develop better control. So especially if the kids are rallying and playing points and doing something in cooperation, for example, that it makes sense to me, Greg, that's a good use of a low compression ball, especially in the early stages. You know, I don't want to get off on too many rants here or tangents, but I have a lot of thoughts on this. I mean, this could take up the whole show, guys. I mean, forget the other topics. We were going to talk about how the forehand follow through to the shoulder is dead or it's dying, because it is. I don't even know if we're going to get to any other technical topics. This topic is huge and it's so big and fiery. It's a major subject that is on tennis coaches on their minds, and it's on parents' minds. And I guess I didn't realize we'd have so much interest tonight, but we do, which is actually good. It's good to have passionate discussion. Let's see. Maybe I might get flamed tonight. It's okay. I can handle the flames. I can take it. You know. Let's see. Greg Zachary says, as a coach, it just makes you very conscious. Yeah, when you see a kid get injured, it kind of freaks you out, right? Like I've had some students with stress fracture in their back, or, you know, whatever your experience is with kids, you sort of become very sensitive to those stories, because those stories, they're emotional. There may be kids that you know very well, and they're kids who you've spent a lot of time with, and when they get hurt, it does have a deep impact. I totally understand that. But what I'm saying is we try to be objective in the way that we teach, and then the recommendations that we give to parents. Try to make sure that we're giving advice that's evidence-based, that's based on some, if possible, some sort of good science, you know, good scientific study, a well-constructed scientific study. And if not, based on a lot of experience with a large group of players, a large cohort, you know, a large base to make your determinations from. Because if it's just a few players, you know, that's not a great sample size. Try to make your decisions and your recommendations based on a broad group of players that you work with over many years. A large sample size, in other words, and also, if possible, scientific study. Unfortunately, sometimes in tennis, we don't have enough scientific studies. We don't have that much research to go on, so we're left with experience and common sense and opinions of the experts in the field who have sort of done a lot of trial and error and have been doing it a long time. So we're left with that many times. All right, Jesse Cooper is waving. Thank you, amigo. Top Tennis is waving. Thank you. Larry Klein is a regular. Thank you so much for supporting the show, guys. Appreciate it. Wait a minute. We got a rock star on the program. Ben Sterner is watching and waving. What's up, buddy? Ben Sterner, are you training your kids with the red, orange, green? Are you going to go yellow? You've got some little superstars there. Ooh, big decision. I'll just tell you this. If you choose to go yellow, I know how to do it well, and I can do it safely. If you choose to go red, orange, green, I could teach that too. You know, it's about the coach and the philosophy and the knowledge and the experience. It's not so much about the ball or the size of the court. We are obsessed with that here in the U.S., and it's become like a cult. C-U-L-T, cult. And I like to call it the way I see it. That's the way I see it, guys. Let's see who we got on the show. Wait a minute. Hugo Ball Green, an authentic French coach, my assistant coach, is going to chime in. He says in France, it's all about teaching technique to the kids, using a lot of material on the court for the little ones, cones, hula hoops, plastic lines, etc., and keeping it as interactive and fun as possible for the little kids. Eventually, at the end of the session, we'll play games. So yeah, that's your experience, Hugo, in France. I wonder if other top coaches in France would agree. I would be interested in getting other French coaches and and getting their perspective. But I think you're essentially right. I think the technique is the key. You know, you can make tennis fun for little kids, but you can't neglect their technical training. And that's what I see happening so much here in the U.S. You have just hundreds and hundreds of clubs and thousands of coaches who are teaching games, and they're not teaching enough technical skill within the game. And I think that's why you see so many poor players coming out of U10. I think it's really an epidemic here in the U.S. I don't know if it's like that in other countries, but in my experience, especially here in the northeastern part of the U.S., we have so many players coming out of U10 with very poor foundations. I'll tell you a little anecdote. I've been to some orange ball tournaments here in New York, and they are a joke, an absolute travesty. And what I mean by that is it's not like Belgium, folks. You don't see little superstars that look like little pros on a ping pong size court. What you see is kids standing around, not moving their feet, very stiff strokes, very short rallies. I mean, what are we doing, guys? I mean, isn't orange ball progression supposed to make the kids better, improve their technique, improve their tactical skills, improve the rally length, right? I mean, USDA is forcing everyone to do orange ball now. It's required. It's a mandate. We can discuss that as well, guys, because it's a stupid mandate. I have so many parents who hate it. It's a big turnoff. It's just another way that USDA has made the game more complicated for parents and families at a young level. Just a big turnoff, you know. And you got to play with this. You know, USDA regulations, I don't know if it's like this in every section, but you have to play with a very small racket. I think it's 23, 24, 25. Maybe it's 25. You know, so you have kids who are training with green and yellow. They're able to play green and yellow, but then they have to go through all these tournaments with orange, with the smaller stick. I mean, it's crazy stuff, crazy making. I had some kids who had to have a special small racket that they would use for tournaments, so they would have to switch sides of the racket because they couldn't play with their normal racket to get through orange ball progression because it's a mandate. And, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's just, what a pain in the ass, you know. I don't know what to say about that, guys. Yeah, if you're a good player, you can get through the orange ball progression very easily. Just another example of junior tennis doing things, making things more complicated, making things less fun. And the goal is to like make the players better, but it doesn't. I mean, if you see American orange ball, it's terrible. The skill level is terrible. It's an embarrassment. You look at Belgian players at 8 years and 9 years, man. They got that big technique book over there, and they're not messing around. And in France, it's the same, man. They love their technique. They teach beautiful skills, man. That's what you got to do with those little superstars. All right, let's see what we got here. Jim Kane says we got a lot of comments up on the board. I may have struck a nerve. I'm sorry, guys. Try not to hate me too much. I'm just calling it the way I see it. I'm a straight shooter, as you know. I try to give you the real deal, keep it real to level 10, which is the highest level of keeping it legit. Jim Kane says, let's see, I agree that gifted kids can experiment with the super fast ball, but for the average 6 to 7 or 8-year-old who may lack the confidence and possibly be introverted. Interesting, Jim, introverted. Well, Chris, I will trust a top coach to figure out what is best for their students. Maybe a bigger sponge ball to start out with. I have a personal story I can share sometime in regards to the sponge ball sparking an interest in a child turned off by the traditional ball. Actually, Jim, I think that's a very good point. And I think that there is evidence, a lot of evidence, whether it's anecdotal evidence, experiential evidence, and some studies that show that, like there's an Australian study that shows that the red orange, green, the balls make the game a lot more fun and enjoyable for children. So I think there's a lot of support for that. So that claim is a good one, and I think it's a very good argument. What I'm saying is I see many, many coaches and leaders in the industry conflate, and that means to mix the two. They conflate the evidence for fun and enjoyable and getting more satisfaction with elite development. And those are not the same thing. Now, you can say that there's evidence for more satisfaction for young kids to play with a red ball or an orange ball, but that's very different from saying that a red and orange ball is a quote-unquote better way to develop elite or serious players or competitive players. And I see that myth, this is getting back to the myth that I started the show with. I see that myth propounded, spread all the time. I see it everywhere. I see it in literature. I see it in advertisements. I see it in articles. I see it at conferences, and it's a myth. It's a myth that there's evidence that using a red or an orange ball is a better, more efficient, more productive, faster way, whatever you want to say, is a better way to develop elite, serious players. And that's sort of that's the beef I have, with the way it's being marketed, the way it's being spoken about. It's a myth. It's a fallacy. And it's wrong to conflate the two, to take the evidence and use the evidence of satisfaction as evidence for better high-performance players. And I see that quite frequently out there in the industry, and I'm just going to call it the way it is because, I like to call it out. That's the way I see it. Okay. Hugo Ball Green says, Hugo Ball Green is blowing up the program tonight. He says, in France, we use a big, slow plastic ball for young kids starting tennis. I find it very effective because due to the size and speed, it allows a lot of repetition and volume of play. So yeah, this is an interesting new phenomenon in France. They're using like this bigger, even bigger than the foam balls that we have here in the US. And I know that's starting to catch on. And I think that's cool, man. You get a kid like 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. I'm not going to use a yellow ball with that kid. We're going to use a soft ball because at that age, what's it all about? It's about, having fun, enjoying hitting the ball, getting a good rally. And the kids are not very well formed. But once those kids start to hit, 6, 7, 8, if they're, relatively talented, I deal with a lot of those kids who have maybe more ability than the average kid. I don't deal with too many. I don't have too many I don't coach any recreational kids, but I would say on the average, the kids that I work with are relatively, talented athletes. They don't need to use a slow ball. They're perfectly fine with the faster ball. I think the modified racket makes sense because you don't want to tear up their shoulder or get any potential limb joint injuries. So. That's kind of how I see it. Now, if a player does want to go through that progression, can it be done well? Yeah, I think it can be done well. Let's look to France. Let's look to Belgium. You can develop very, very good elite players using that progression, but it has to be done right. You have to teach the skills well. This is why I say it gets back to the coach. It gets back to the system and the method that the coach is using. Gets back to the parents and what they're stressing, So you can do a red, orange, green really badly, or you can do it really well. So, for example, you can get a really beautiful game coming out of red, orange, green, maybe like 9 or 10. I wouldn't say wait too long because I think those players should get adjusted fairly early to the speed of a normal ball and also to the size of covering a big court, so that they can build their stamina and their movement and their reaction and their agility on a big court. So I get a little nervous when a player's like 11, 12, and they still have never played real tennis, I know some people object to that term, but they've never played yellow ball, full court tennis, and they're like hitting 12. I have seen that here in the U.S. I've had players come to me. Again, this is my own personal experience. These are anecdotes, so that's what we have to go on here. And I've seen players who haven't hit a yellow ball. They're 12 years old. They just start around 12 to hit a yellow ball. And this may be just a case-by-case situation, but in the U.S., I see a lot of those kids and they can't crack an egg. I don't know why that is. Maybe they're hitting softly to keep the ball in a small court. I think that happens a lot. Sometimes you see that at orange ball tournaments here in the U.S. For some reason, when you see the national championships for Belgium in like 8 and under or 10 and under, it looks real good. It looks good to me. I see racket speed. I see acceleration. I see elasticity. I see good movement. And I see nice strokes. I see the things that I would like to see in a young kid. I see it in Belgium. You see it in France. But for some reason here in the U.S., there's some sort of disconnect. It's not working. I think it comes back to the coaches. It comes back to the coaches and the parents, what they're emphasizing, what skills they're developing, and whether they're just playing games or if they're spending a lot of time building skill, building technique. And the players that I see coming out of red, orange, green at 9 or 10 or 11, God forbid, 11 or 12, and they haven't played on a full court yet, haven't played with a yellow ball yet, those kids are behind. Those kids are behind, let's face it. They have a big gap to catch up. They have a gap to close. And I just get nervous if that gap is too big, that those kids may never catch up, So I was mentioning that I have some players who have come to me who played a lot of low compression ball and mini tennis, and they didn't learn to accelerate when they were young because they didn't want to hit the ball too far. Like, for example, I have this little boy who I coach who's a pretty strong kid, and when he played orange and he went through the orange progression, the USDA orange progression, he would have to go and decelerate all his shots. He'd sort of have to poke his shots. He would have to push his shots because if he swung full force, it would go out and he would lose the point. So that's just a personal example, story. It's not obviously not a. I can't say that applies to everyone writ large, but that is I've had some experiences like that. I've seen it with my own eyes, where this kid couldn't take a full cut at the ball. So I don't think that's really healthy for a young kid who's powerful. And I've seen a lot of orange ball matches where the kids are not moving well. Not like in Belgium, man. Those kids are moving beautifully in Belgium. In the U.S., for some reason, the kids, I think they're not taught the movement skills. The coaches are not teaching it, The kids aren't moving that well. They're not moving gracefully or fluidly. And there's a lot of standing around and slapping the ball with stiff form, bad technique, What can I say? That's what I'm seeing. What are you guys seeing in your neck of the woods? You see the same thing? You're seeing beautiful stuff? What are you seeing? Johnny Pauls is watching. Thank you for supporting the program. Appreciate it. Jesse Cooper has a comment. Let's see what he says. Ooh, it's a long comment, Jesse. You're really getting after it, man. All right, let's see what you got here. It says, what did the organization start using colorful balls? What are they saying about not using the normal ball? Do you mean the USDA? Are you in the US, Jesse? Are you international? We have a lot of international coaches who watch the show. In the USDA, it's a mandate that we use the red, orange, green. There's a progression in tournaments. I guess it's not a mandate as a coach. You can teach any way you want, but there's a heavy pressure from the USDA. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of peer pressure and there's a lot of organizational pressure to use the red, orange, green on the coaching court. And then we have a mandate here in the U.S. that we have the kids have to play orange ball on a 60-foot court when they're little. They have to go through an orange ball progression. It's not the end of the world. If it's a good player, they can get through it pretty fast. But it's a pain in the ass for a lot of parents and a lot of kids who maybe they're practicing at a higher level and they have to go back and play lower level orange ball tournaments. Not really ideal. Let's see. Jesse has a question. Thanks for all the questions, Jesse. Thank you for putting all your thoughts down and contributing. So he says, also, why do the kids need to play those USDA tournaments? Why not skip it and the coach set up competitions that are suitable for their development? Yes, and actually there's a lot of parents who are doing that now. Some parents will play exclusively like the Little Mo circuit. Many parents are playing UTR now because they're unhappy with the USDA progression. It's just kind of a pain in the ass, kind of annoying. And I think USDA should tread carefully because they risk losing many families to other tournament systems, other tournament calendars. And I could see a broad-based boycott of USDA tournaments. I could see UTR taking over a lot of the junior scene. Little Mo does a good job. There are other organizations that are running junior international tournaments. So I just think I don't have any ill will towards the USDA. I have lots of friends in the USDA. I know a lot of good coaches in the USDA and smart people there. This is another misguided proposal and plan and mandate. And it reminds me sort of like the net generation thing. I wasn't meaning to talk about net generation, but in my opinion, net generation is like a huge waste of marketing resources. I think that money, incredible, it must be a lot of money. Very slick marketing materials for net generation could be used for much better purposes. For example, I don't really see that marketing campaign taking off. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't really see it working. I don't see a lot of coaches adhering to the net generation protocols. But, that's just kind of maybe a related topic. But I just think, USDA is making another blunder here, another way that they're turning off parents. And I wouldn't be surprised if more and more parents started boycotting USDA tournaments and started playing more UTR or Little Mo or some combination of thereof, or some of the other organizations like 10 Pro, and there are other organizations running tournaments for juniors, and they're just innovating. The USDA is so stuck, they're so rigid, and they're so slow to respond. They don't have a lot of agility. And you just see some of these startups and some of these new organizations running more innovative tournaments with, that maybe allow coaching, or that are more fun for the kids, or just run better, and the USDA just falling behind and just getting caught up with, I don't know if it's too many committees or a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, but, they need to be more nimble. And they need to be more innovative and get a better read on their customer base, get a better read on the client, the families out there. I'm very in touch with what those people are feeling and what they're experiencing. And I don't think USDA is very in touch with that. And as is very common, they have sort of a deaf ear. They're very tone deaf when it comes to listening to what parents and families are experiencing. I don't know why bureaucratically and organizationally they have struggled with that, but it's not the first time that USDA has been somewhat tone deaf to what's happening out in the industry, out in the trenches, or on the court with for juniors. So that's sort of my take on that. Jesse says he's in Houston. He says that, are you using yellow ball, Jesse? Is that what you're doing? Let me know if you're using yellow ball or if you're using the red, orange, green system. I think, like I'm saying, it's good to understand both methods and maybe even have some skill in using both systems. But I don't think it's a black and white thing. And I'm definitely not completely anti-colored ball or anti-mini tennis. I hope you guys are seeing that. I'm trying to strike a middle road here, and I'm trying to find nuance in between two very divergent points of view, and in my opinion, very cult-like points of view. The red, orange, green is like a cult now in the U.S., where you can't even talk to some of these folks. It's like a religious, it's like trying to talk to a religious zealot who won't listen to any reason or fact or evidence, and it can be the same on the yellow ball side. You have traditional coaches or coaches who are, insistent on using a yellow ball exclusively, and they won't listen to any reason on their side either. So I'm just sort of trying to strike a middle road here, trying to find some nuance in this controversial debate. And I hope you guys find it helpful. I know that for parents, and I do this show for a lot of parents and families, I know that this is a very common question. I get this question all the time from parents who just want to do the best thing for their kid. They want their kid to be safe. They want them to have a healthy U10 development. And the parents are very confused, and they get a lot of, I think, misguided messages from the coaching community and from the club leadership and from the tennis leadership in general, or writ large. That the leadership in tennis just sort of spins a web of a marketing web that says you got to do it this way. I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but there is also a big economic factor in red, orange, green. There's money involved, guys. I hope you understand that a lot of the marketing push for red, orange, green is driven by the industry and, the ball sales and the racket sales. There's these getting people to upgrade their rackets every year is very good for the racket manufacturers. Getting people to buy the expensive colored balls is very good for the ball manufacturers. So you have to understand there is some economics at play here too that sort of drive the discussion, that drive the messaging in the industry. And, that can sometimes cloud the reality, and that can sometimes create misimpression and it can create a lot of misunderstandings, let's put it that way, in the industry itself. And that trickles down to the parents who are just trying to do the best things for their kids. So, let's see who's tuning in. Very lively action tonight on the program, guys. I'm starting to feel a little bit tired after my 12-hour shift on the tennis courts. I might have to go sleepy night soon, but let me try to answer a few more questions before I go. Did I even get to my topic I didn't get to the topic of how kids should jump on their ground strokes and kids should, the follow through to the shoulder is dead. It's dying. So maybe that's a common topic that I like to discuss. So we can get into that a little more, maybe on another program. But guys, it is dying. The follow through to the shoulder is dying. If you didn't realize that, it's time to wake up and face the reality that follow-throughs to the top of the shoulder, if they're not dead already, they are dying relatively quickly. Also, staying grounded with both feet, touching the surface of the court during all strokes is also dying. And players more and more are leaving the ground. They're using their legs to push and lift their feet off the ground, and we should teach that. It is an evolution, it's a trend, and it's becoming more and more common now. And I teach it to all my young kids, teach them how to jump, teach them how to use their legs and spin their hips and get airborne in a balanced way. And we should be teaching that to young high-performance players. We don't have to have all of our U10 players stiff and grounded, and that's what I see. So many players, 9, 10, 11, and they come to me stiff and grounded. So their legs, their feet are stuck to the ground, and their arm movements are stiff. Guys, we should teach elasticity and good kinetic chain loading and get those kids spinning their hips and getting off the ground whenever they can, or at least getting one foot off the ground with a good body rotation. And we should get that elasticity in the arm or the arms, whether it's a backhand or a two-hander or a one-hander. If I could just get more players coming out of U10 who have some of that, like the little Belgian kids. They're elastic, they move gracefully, and they have good modern biomechanics. Those are the kids, that's how we should be teaching U10. It doesn't have to be stiff, old school, no movement. And that's what I see all the time in orange ball tournaments, driving me bananas. It's driving me cray-cray. Salvador Gomez, mi amigo, que pasa? Que paso? My buddy from the Philippines. Cool, man. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it, buddy. Good to have you back on the program. The program is blowing up tonight. Got a lot of new viewers and a lot of comments on the board. I appreciate all the enthusiasm, and I appreciate your support. It's definitely not easy to do a show every Sunday after a long weekend on the courts, but I enjoy it. I enjoy sharing the knowledge and also learning from you guys, learning from your experiences, and we have a great discussion every Sunday night. So thank you. I appreciate you guys. Tell your friends, please. Give the program a like. Give it a thumbs up. Share the links so that we can get more coaches and parents tuning into the show. And if you have trouble viewing the show on Sunday night, guys, we have the replay is always on my Facebook page, so you can always find the replays of our shows. And also, we keep an archive of all the shows on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Chris Lewit. So if you go to the Chris Lewit Tennis YouTube channel, it's youtube.com//Chris Lewit. And you can find all of the shows. This is our season number 2. This is episode 2 of season 2. We have a whole first season. I think we have about 17 episodes. And also, all of these shows are translated and transferred onto a podcast platform. So you can get all of these shows when you're jogging, when you're in the car, when you don't have the ability to watch. You can listen to my voice, and you can participate in the show and enjoy all of the discussion that we have. You can listen to that on your favorite podcasting platform, whether it's iTunes or Google Play or SoundCloud or Stitcher, whatever your favorite platform is. This show is rebroadcast on podcast, which I think is great, because a lot of times I know that I'm really busy and I don't have time to watch something, a video or something on the television or on the internet, but I do usually have time to flip my headphones on and listen to a podcast. And in fact, I stay up to date on a lot of the industry trends through podcasts. There are some good tennis podcasts. I think we have the market on high performance. I don't know anyone who's doing a high performance podcast like us, where you can, talk about the hot topics in junior development and have high level technique discussions and deal with some of the controversies in the high performance community. I don't know anyone who's doing a show like that. There are some generally good tennis podcasts on some general trends. Occasionally have some really good guests. So that's what I look for. I look for a really good guest. Most of the podcasts are guest based. So yeah, once in a while, some guests tuning in, but a lot of those podcasts are for like recreational players, 3.0, 4.0 adults. I mean, that's not really what we're doing. I mean, those players are welcome to tune in and listen to our show and learn about high performance, but this show is all about serious training, junior development. This is the Prodigy Maker show. This is about how do you develop top players, how do you develop top juniors. And yeah, we cover some other topics in high performance, some other topics, pro tour development, things like that, pro tour tennis and topics like that. But, I think we have a very unique focus in terms of the podcast and sort of the niche that we're in. So guys, I appreciate you tuning in. I am going to sign off here. I appreciate all of the support that we've had tonight and all of your comments and enthusiasm. I will see you guys on the next program. Remember, every Sunday night, 9:45 p.m., and you can join me live or you can catch the replays in the podcast. Really appreciate all the thumbs up I'm getting. I appreciate your support. Biggest thing I could ask you guys is try to share. Try to tell your friends. Say, hey, this guy Chris, he's doing a good show. He's staying up late Sunday night, and he's dropping the knowledge, and he's trying to take on some of the big topics in high performance. So if you have friends who have juniors, or if you have friends who are high performance coaches or things like that, appreciate you sharing the show with them so we can grow a bigger audience, and that way we can all share in the knowledge and experience that we have. So thank you guys. God bless. Have a good night. Sammy says good night. I don't think he's napping. I don't know what. He's running around my house. I got to go get Sammy. Appreciate it, guys, and I'll see you on the next Sunday program.